Hey everybody, I was looking at this question of how there's so many religions and movements and philosophies and so forth that purport to have the answers to life, and yet they all basically require that you follow them. But what if the answers to life, what if the answers to solving the problems in this world, what if they don't already exist? Meaning, it's like religion, philosophy, etc. presupposes that the answer already exists and we just don't know, we're ignorant of it. But what I'm suggesting is that, in fact, the answer doesn't already exist. The actual answer, the actual solution, can only exist when all of us together live it as the expression of ourselves. So we're all trying to get to something. We're all trying to get to some answer, or find some answer, or follow some answer, when in fact we are the answer. Meaning, it's all of us here on earth finding a way in which to live together in harmony. So it doesn't already exist. It's not information you can just accept and then suddenly everything's okay. And this is the problem with religions that require adherents to follow them, because then what happens is it becomes a battle of one religion's followers versus another religion's followers. And so we end up having this battle and this conflict, and nothing ever changes. And this has been going on for how long? When in fact the solution is not to take a certain piece of information and follow it. The actual solution is to let go of everything that you think you know. Because anytime you think you have an answer, which is knowledge and information, and then you try to follow that, and then you try to go and get adherents, you're not actually living here practically, looking at each situation and what's required, what would actually be best in that situation. So the solution is not a set of information to follow. It is to apply yourself within questioning every answer that you've come to. Now, I'm not saying that everything is subjective. I'm not saying everything is relative. I'm not saying that there is no answer. What I'm saying is the answer is the actual living expression of all of us together recognizing our basic fundamental equality. Equality doesn't mean sameness. It doesn't mean suppression of the individual. It doesn't mean subordination of the individual to the collective. It means embracing the individuality of all of us and yet recognizing that we are in a collective. See, the current problem that I see is, even in the political sphere, you have left and you have right. But the fact is, when you try to go left or you try to go right, you're going to end up at the same point, because we live on a round earth. So you're going to go round and round in circles, and you're going to get more extreme, and people are going to be more divided because people are seeing things in different ways, and people are addressing different problems from different vantage points. And the problem is we're not recognizing what is our actual inherent equality of all human beings, of all life, of all matter. There's an inherent equality. And again, equality doesn't mean sameness. It doesn't mean that you should have exactly the same thing I should have, because we'll have different desires, we'll have different preferences, and yet we can agree that as human beings we both need certain things like air, water, clothing, shelter, etc. And there's basic needs that we need. So recognizing equality doesn't mean that suddenly everybody has to be the same. It just means that there is a level at which we are all the same. We are all made of the same substance. That's a fact. There's no denying that. And as human beings, we have very similar physical forms, not exactly the same. And some people, depending on their physical form, may have slightly different needs, but we do have some basic fundamental needs. And in itself, the fact that we don't recognize that, and that we don't come together as a human race and guarantee that everybody has those basic physical needs met in order to basically live a life of dignity, right? I'm not saying everybody is given everything of luxury and all that stuff, but what I know, because I can see it, it's obvious to me, is that if there wasn't that anxiety of having to survive at just a basic level, if that anxiety didn't exist within each of us, we would see each other differently. We would be more loving towards each other. We wouldn't feel as competitive. We wouldn't feel like strangers. We wouldn't feel like, does that make sense? We wouldn't feel this sort of separation between each other. That separation that we feel is a product of the kind of undercurrent, the kind of constant anxiety that all of us experience, because we have to get up and we have to go do things on a daily basis that we really would rather not do. And many of us, we do things that we believe are helpful, that we believe contribute to the world, but in fact only actually perpetuate the system that we live in, which is one of inequality. And I know that the word equality is a very challenging word, especially when, you know, we learn about like communism and socialism and all those things. I'm not really talking about socialism or communism, because that is both of those things are imposed from the top down, and I spoke about this on one of my recent videos. What I'm talking about is something from the bottom up. It's about what's in your heart as an individual. It's not about the government or some system imposing equality. It's about recognizing your equality. And I think that a lot of people do feel that deep down, but from a young age, we're not really able to express that to each other, or express it. It doesn't mean we have to express it in words, but we don't express it in a physical sense, from the perspective that, you know, we don't make sure that everybody has what they need at a basic level. So that constant anxiety is always there. Even if you have a lot of money, there's still an anxiety that you could lose it, or that it could be taken away from you. And that's why you have the current 1%, to a certain degree, resisting changes in the system that would be best for everybody, because their position would be threatened. And so that's why the change in this world has to come from the bottom up. It has to come from within the individual. So the solution, the answers to life, are not to be found without, they're within. Because the answer is the answer to a question. The question is, who are you? You are life. Like, life doesn't exist outside of us. It's not something that's happening to us. It's us. Like, we are life. And so we are the expression of life. If we did not exist, there wouldn't be life. Like, we are life expressing itself and experiencing itself here, right now. And so there's no answers to life that can be imposed or that you can find. The only answer to life, the only answer to the question is, who are you? It's like, as life, which you are, how would you like to experience yourself? How would you like to express yourself? What kind of world would you like to create? And for far too long, we've believed that we are victims to our experience. We believe that there's an external power or external force that's directing and controlling everything, and we're just basically subservient or victim or subordinate to that, without realizing the common sense that actually there is nothing higher. There's simply everything that exists physically, and all of that collectively is God. But in itself, there's nothing beyond that. And so we have created a system of resource management in this world, which in a sense now acts as God, because it determines who lives and who dies. And there's very little that as an individual right now you can do to change that from the external perspective. But what you can do is look at where you've accepted within yourself a point of believing that the answers to life exist outside of you, that you need to find and follow something, and then that is the purpose of your life. Because if you if you accept that, then what is created is a world of followers. But who are we following? Because the common sense suggests that there is nothing outside of ourselves. You can't see it. There's no evidence of it. You can rationalize it, sure. You can feel a certain way about it, sure. But there's no physical, tangible evidence that there's anything benevolent that is actually out there beyond us that is going to take care of us. And the more that we believe in something like that, the less personal self-responsibility we take for making this world that place that it could be, even if that thing did exist. I mean, really, really think about it. If there was some other force out there, wouldn't it want you to take responsibility? Why would you exist otherwise? Why would you have a consciousness? Why would you have a self-awareness if it's not to make choices and direct and create this world in the best way possible? Otherwise, it's kind of cruel. It's like, why would you, if there's a God or if there's some higher power, why would you be created with a consciousness and a self-awareness to experience yourself, and yet you have no control over reality? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And what I would suggest is that at the end of the day, all of us together collectively are creating this reality, are creating this world that we find ourselves in. We're shaping it, we're molding it, we're creating the systems that govern this world as human beings. And it's our starting point of whether or not we are going to allow ourselves to live in fear of each other, in fear of death, in fear of not surviving. It's whether we're going to choose things at those basic levels that's going to determine the reality that we experience. The reality that we experience is, on the outward level, is simply a reflection of what's going on within us on the internal. And so the answers to life are really within each and every one of us. It's just the answer, because when you really think about it, what does it mean to have an answer? There has to be a question. The question is, who are you? Who am I? If I find myself here in reality and knowing what I know, realizing what I realize, understanding what I understand, that we live in a world that's being created collectively, that is the reflection of all of everything that each and every one of us accept within ourselves, then it's my responsibility to question everything that I've accepted, see what is actually best for myself and everyone else, and that which isn't, to discard that, to renounce it, to repent, if you will. But realize that there's no higher power that's going to do that for me, because those are things I've accepted. If you believe that it's something that was put into you and that you haven't accepted it and there's nothing you can do about it, what does that say about what you are? What does that say about what you are as an individual or a being or a part of existence? It says that you're nothing. It says that you don't really exist. It says that you're just an observer experiencing things for no purpose whatsoever, for no reason whatsoever. It says that your whole existence is a lie. It's not real. The only way for you to be real at all is if you are able to take responsibility and that you are able to accept things and live those things out, or not accept things and live only what's best, or make choices. If you're not able to make choices, you're not real. And that is the major problem with putting the answers to life outside of ourselves, is that we end up creating a world that reflects that. And then it's a world that looks like everything is beyond our control. And so what ends up happening is we just end up complaining about everything and blaming everything on someone else. And then that always comes back on us. We get blamed and everything. But then if we don't think we're in control, then what does it matter anyways? So that leads to a sort of nihilistic, subjective, relative viewpoint of the world. And I don't accept either the left or the right, because either one of those is a polarity. Neither political viewpoint, regardless, looks at the basic fundamental equality that exists within each one of us. And neither one of them takes the point of self-responsibility to the real full point, which is solely within the individual. But then we have to realize that as individuals, we're at different places in life. And so we have different skill sets, we have different understandings, we have different vocabulary levels. And so some of us can take more or less responsibility in the external sense. But at the end of the day, basic bottom line point is you have to take responsibility for yourself first. I have to take responsibility for myself first, because otherwise what I say or what I do has no effect. It has no meaning, because I'm not changing within myself, and therefore what am I contributing? If I'm only trying to change things externally and I haven't changed what's inside of me, then I haven't taken the first step towards changing anything. We have to understand that. The answers to life are not going to be found externally. They're going to be expressed externally, but only once each of us individually have let go of the past. And when I say let go of the past, I don't mean just forget about it, just suppress it. I mean, look at it. Look at what you've accepted, because all of the past is stored within you. It's within you, physically, in your flesh, as memories, stored physically in you, just like a computer. And you have to question each of those points. And we have to go through and we have to question each of our memories, every thought, every feeling, every belief, every opinion. We have to question them and see, is that information being within me, which is directing how I live at an unconscious level, is that best for me? Is it best for everybody? Is the consequence that it produces actually best? Because if it's not, then I have responsibility to remove it and to get rid of it. And the way you do that is simple. It's called self-forgiveness. And you can see if your forgiveness is effective, because you'll stop participating in that pattern. It may take time, but you'll get to a point where you start to trust yourself more and more and more and more, because you see that you stop participating in things when you forgive yourself. It is a process. So that's what I wanted to share today. The point that the answers to making this world a place that's best for all don't exist somewhere else. It's not in a religion. I want to say it's not in a philosophy, to the degree that if the philosophy doesn't place responsibility and power of forgiveness and honesty and understanding and common sense within the individual, then that philosophy is simply a tool to create more followers. Because the ultimate answers to the world has to be more and more and more and more self-leadership. It has to start with a few who can hear the message, and that will grow, because we start standing up and sending as examples, and we show that we can forgive and we can let go and we can accept more, a higher standard of ourselves, a higher standard of excellence, a higher standard of focusing on what's best. Because if we don't do that, then we just keep creating more of the same, and then it's like, really, what was the point of ever existing in the first place?